Waiters and waitresses of Reddit, what is the most awkward couple date you have ever witnessed at work? They sat down and, from the girl's body language, you could tell she was into him. As the date progressed, she closed off, then sat pretty much sideways, then was playing on her phone. The body language shift occurred over maybe 1.5 hours. He didn't stop talking the entire time. She did give some nods and ahs in response, even perked up a few times to contribute. But his monologue never stopped. I was eating at a restaurant and heard the hostess ask a couple she was seating if they were out for anything special. The husband replied, "No. It's just our anniversary. It has inspired my father-in-law to drop that line almost any time he goes out to eat now." I've told this one here before. I worked in a resort hotel. High-end. I waited tables in the fine dining restaurant. It was pretty common for people to propose there. So much so that I had a system for the whole thing. One guy came in and wanted to do the ring in the champagne thing. And I talked him into doing a dessert alternative that doesn't result in a sticky ring and champagne on the floor. Anyway. Long story short. I bring the ring. She says, "Damn it. I've told you before I'm not marrying you." He flips. She's super calm about it and basically treats him like a child having a tantrum. Which to his credit he was not screaming or anything. Just very upset. He left. She ate the ducking dessert. Eventually he came back and paid and they left together. Super awkward. There was a couple sitting at the bar together. Seemed like it was a first date. Maybe after 30 minutes of them being together, I'm in the back rolling silverware and the dude comes running into the back and goes, "There's an exit back here." Right, and proceeds to bolt out of the back door. We were all flummoxed. The girl sat at the bar alone for at least another 45 minutes before she left. I guess you could call this a couple date. I was working at a wine bar when a married couple sat down on a pretty slow night. I went over the specials and they ordered. Once appetizers came out, the man thought it would be a good idea to serve his wife divorce papers. I did my best to avoid that side of the bar. I did bring out tissues for the wife who was breaking down. I ended up boxing up the dinner. The guy paid, but I do not envy that ride home. There's a habit of some older couples where the elderly gentleman will order on behalf of his wife. I guess it might have been cute and romantic once. But it doesn't work with some younger couples. I was serving a younger couple, early 20s, who seemed pretty early into the relationship. They were ordering drinks and he orders her drink for her. Far from being dazzled by him knowing what she wanted. She didn't want any of it. "Well, I'd actually like a latte. Not a Coke. But fine, whatever. If I don't get a say." He responded quite angrily with, "Oh, sorry. Have what you want then." She got a latte and he glared at me. They ate and left. Not been in since. I'm sure they are doing well. There was a couple at my work having drinks. Girl went to the toilet. Came back and admitted that she'd been sleeping with the guy's brother. Apparently glasses were thrown across the room and they both got kicked out. IDK if this counts. But when I was a waitress at Olive Garden, one of my tables was going over their divorce paperwork. When I greeted the table, I asked how everyone was and the woman said, "Terrible. We are getting a divorce. Like, WTF do I say to that?" Bartender at the time. Not a waiter. But they were in front of the bar. Attractive woman comes in with a very loud dude who never took off his rollerblades. Humbler brags badly. Mostly just bragged. He clearly thought sounded humble, loud enough for me to hear in a bar for about an hour. Thanks her and leaves. He thought it was a date. Apparently she was doing sociological research on people who used Tinder. I was relieved. Really little guy. Maybe 5'4". 120 pounds comes in with a gigantic woman. Probably 6 feet tall and easily 300 pounds. Both tatted the duck up with piercings to match. The woman orders her dish and before I get the guy's order, he says in a sexy voice, "I think you want more than that." She smirks at him. Says, "You know I do." And orders 3 more entrees. This was clearly a thing for them. They seemed incredibly happy together and became regulars at my restaurant. I feel like I played a not insignificant role in this bizarre couple's eating fetish for like 3 years. Not exactly a date, but I served a couple one time who had met up to discuss the terms of their divorce at the fancy-ish restaurant I worked at the time. They came before the dinner rush, so they were pretty much my only table. And every time I'd check in on them, the wife was extremely angry, tearful, and they were bickering about holiday schedules for their daughter, timeshares etc. It wasn't the end of the world, but it was extremely awkward to butt in to change out their forks or fill drinks while they were so emotionally charged. Served a deaf couple having a fight. They went from both of them signing furiously to her crying and signaling to me for a stack of napkins for, I assumed, her tears. She whips out a pen and starts writing paragraph after paragraph angrily. It was awkward because I kept having to come back to the table since they ordered multiple courses and he was just eating and signing while she was hunched over the table writing away while crying. When they finally left, they tipped me pretty well though, so I guess it wasn't too bad. Was a cocktail waitress at a bar in a high-end restaurant a couple years ago. This couple comes in right around peak hours. Guy looks annoyed. Girl looks really excited. The whole time the girl is trying to talk to this guy and he's completely ignoring her. He gets a call and talks on the phone for a good 10 minutes. Hangs up and starts talking to anyone around him but her. He's getting more and more drunk and starts hitting on the female bartender and eventually the cocktail waitresses, myself included, telling us he could get us all much better jobs in Atlanta. The girl he's on a date with has started crying at this point, and once he actually notices, he yells at the bartender because it was obviously restaurant's fault for her being upset. She yells at him to stop yelling at the bartender because he's been such an awful date, and he goes off. Tells her he didn't even want to eat here. She should have picked a better place. And he isn't paying for her food and drinks. He then tells her that she didn't look fat in her picture and he wouldn't have asked her out if he'd known she was that big, probably met online kind of thing. She retreats to the bathroom and the guy continues to make a scene. Another girl at the bar and I go to check on her while the bartenders and manager try to deal with him. The girl is super upset and I tell her there's a back door she can leave through and I can get her tab from the bartender. I go back out and the guy had already stormed out and refused to pay, leaving his date with a nearly $200 check. She didn't have the money to pay, so a couple of the bar regulars covered it. Made the whole night super awkward and stressful. Definitely one of the more memorable experiences of that place. One of my first jobs in New York was managing a lounge cocktail bar in a high-end hotel. At around 3 or 4 o'clock, a guy that looked pretty cheesy, slicked back hair, bad suit etc., came up to me and demanded that he get that window table tonight for his date. He had a reservation for 8 p.m. I explained to him that I can't guarantee it etc, and he slipped me $400 with the how about now look, in which I eventually caved in and told him that I'd take care of it. He then pulled another stack of hundreds and started counting them in front of me while asking if I could go a little extra by coming over to the table when he was there with the date and pretend that I knew him from a movie. At this point, if I've gone this far, why not? Sure enough, he rolled around later in the evening with a blonde bimbo, and after they'd had a glass of champagne I approached the tables around them. Checked on how they were doing before going over to him and did the whole "how are you enjoying your evening," and before walking off I did an Oscar-worthy double take with her "Are you, by any chance? You must be," at which point he had this douchy smile lapping up the recognition he was getting from this young dude he'd just paid off. Most importantly for him though, it worked. She was loving it, and they left shortly after and he slipped me another $600 on the way out. Not technically a waiter, but I worked at McDonald's, one of the thankfully less trashy ones, and a couple came in. Woman sat down and the man tried to order. There was lots of umming and ahhing at what he wanted to buy. He ordered 2 meals that we gave to him and he went and sat down. What followed was a 10-minute shouting match about how he wouldn't take her on a proper date and how he ducked up even a McDonald's date. Guess he ordered the wrong thing. This wasn't so much as awkward but just unusual. Served a young couple at a high-end Italian restaurant that came in wearing matching outfits. I asked them what the occasion was. They were celebrating their 3-month anniversary. I'm so glad they found each other. When I was waitressing in college, I witnessed the single most embarrassing thing to happen to a person to date. Right in the middle of their dinner, and in the middle of our Friday night dinner rush, this poor guy stands up, taps his wine glass to get everyone's attention, and then proceeds to tell everyone what a fantastic person his GF is, how much he loves her, and how lucky he is to have her in his life. The whole time this is happening, she is just sitting there watching him with the most boring look on her face. It was so weird. Kind of like, yeah, tell me something I don't know. Then poor guy pulls out a ring, gets on one knee and asks her to marry him. She gives him the most disgusted look imaginable and says, "This is the ring you expect me to say yes to? Are you retarded? Could you be any cheaper?" Then she gets up and walks out, leaving the poor guy just kneeling there. I didn't charge him for the meal. Edit, just to clarify. This was a real rejection. Not only had they not even finished their meal when he proposed, a hostess at the restaurant knew the guy personally. Apparently it took him a really long time to get over it. The couple started shouting and then both went into the washroom. We thought they were smashing and dashing without paying, but they came back. I heard some of their convo and it was so awkward. Guy, "So do you golf?" "Cause I golf." Girl, "No," and it went on like that for their whole date. Edit, thanks for the PMS. So I'm not 100% certain, but one time I think someone went to the chain I worked at to meet their mail order brides. It could have been prostitutes, looking back on it, but I thought this at the time. It was two guys in suits that came in seeming really nervous. One comes up to me and lets me know what the girl looks like in case she's confused when she comes in. I'd never gotten the heads up like this before and he seemed super nervous, sketched out. So, the women come in and they don't speak very good English and have heavy accents, which stood out in the small neighborhood. They were dressed very minimally for it being cold and raining outside. I point them out to the table with the two men and they are introducing themselves like it's the first time they met, with awkward hugs and asking about their flights. I got to overhear some of the stilted conversation and talk of money while passing by. The other time was when an ex of mine came in with his girlfriend and she left crying for some reason halfway through. Apparently he brought up that we dated and he kept looking at me, which somehow caused that whole scene. This wasn't a romantic couple, but it was a father and his daughter. I thought everything was going fine, but I could tell I was intruding in on times that they wanted to be alone. So I tried to adapt and stay out of their way. I don't know what happened, but suddenly the daughter begins to cry and I had no idea until I approached and asked how everything was. Immediately he looked annoyed, which was understandable, and I just left and didn't talk to them for the remainder of their meal, including when I dropped off their food and got them the check. She cried the whole meal and it was a very emotional scene. And I'm not entirely sure what had happened, except maybe a divorce or a death in the family. Working at a Chili's on Valentine's Day, the girl gave me her number with her boyfriend in the bathroom. I came back and had to deal with her being sweet to him and nice the rest of the dinner. I did not call or text her. Just was weird every time she'd look me in the eyes following. This was just before Tinder and dating apps were a thing. It was a blind date. Guy and girl. Guy shows up first and is excited until he sees his date. She had their mutual friend show him an old photo of her because she had since gained significant weight. You can tell he was let down, but decided to make the most of it. They ordered drinks and appetizers. We didn't even get appetizers out before the guy noped out of the date. He sat at the bar asking us to bring the appetizers to him there. Her weight wasn't the only thing he was lied to about. Her personality and his clashed so hard the date didn't last 10 minutes. He hung out well after she left. We, the bar and wait staff, invited him to hang out with us at a bar after work. Ended up being a cool guy. Not a waiters, but I was sitting close to them. The guy was on one knee and holding a small black box. When she opened the box he ran away. There was a small paper inside. After reading it she started to cry. Turns out he broke with her. It was funny sad at same time. A girl brought 2 Tinder dates and played them off each other game show style. They seemed to be unaware this was what would happen. Splitting the bill was hilarious. Late to the party, but I will share my story. Had a couple come in one night and everything seemed to be going fine. We just hired a new server who was training and I asked her if she had any questions. She was still nervous about greeting tables, so I told her she could shadow me and watch what I do. We go over to the couple's table and all I hear from the new server is, "You ducking a I knew you were cheating on me." Turns out the guy was her BF on a date with his side chick and he didn't know she just got a job there. She didn't get fired for what she said.